My name is Ida Crick, and I was born in Upline in 1925.
Now, Ida, tell me what your very first memories are as a child.
It was when my mother weaned me, which I presume it was about, I suppose I must have been about 2 or something, as they did in those days, didn't they? That was my first memory of anything like that, you know.
And I know for the first 5 years, you lived in a cottage, didn't you, in Upland?
Yes, Woodhouse Lane, yeah.
So tell me about those first 5 years living in Woodhouse Cottage in Woodhouse Lane.
Well, it was a cottage. It wasn't detached. There was another cottage joined on. And there was a family living there with 2 girls. And we were great friends. We used to play together. And we used to sit on the well outside the front gate. And perhaps I would run indoors and get something to eat, which would be like bread and butter and sugar, or bread and golden syrup, or something like that, and take it out on, sit on the well cover. We used to share it. We had no water, no electric. My mother had to go down the little lane by the cottage to a spring to get the water. We did have a drop of rainwater, I think, for washing clothes and that, while it lasted, you know. Quite hard, but it was something that in those days you just accepted because that was the way of life then for most people. Didn't know any different, but we were happy. When we got home from school, I used to call for Mum and she was always there. And, well, one thing we used to do, have a craze for, we used to go out to a little place called Happy Valley. And in that area, there were a lot of very hilly bracken, bluebells, all the wildflowers. And then the badgers used to make, like, they used to dig in the hillside, and we used to go there and make cabins. We used to take a bit of broken china out and make sheets and make out it was our little cabin. Yes, we used to just go out. We used to love to do that.
What was school like for you, Ida?
Well, at Upland, it was all right until I got into the top standard there. And I was bullied for quite a long while.
And I know that you didn't tell anybody, did you, about...
No, I didn't tell my parents because I thought my father would go up and he'd probably be worse than ever. So he used to make me cry every day. He used to come around, and if you answered wrong, you got quite a clout under the ear. And he used to make me cry every day. Before he went home, he used to try and make me laugh, I suppose. Not to go home and say something, but which I did not say. That went on for quite a while until I went to Axon Senior School, and then that was beautiful. I didn't have any of that.
Tell me about what Upline was like in the 30s and 40s.
I'm the oldest person, I believe, that was actually born in the village. It was lovely. Well, we went to school. That wasn't so lovely, And then Sundays we used to go to Sunday school in the morning and children's service in the afternoon. And they used to have parties in the village hall, like the Buffs used to give us children a party. And we always went home with an orange and a handmade bag with sweets in as we went out the door to go home. And we had a lovely tea, which we thought was lovely in those days. And the village people used to make these little bags with the ribbons and like the little curtain rings and put a ribbon in the top. And they were nice little bags, and we all had a bag when we went out the door.
And you had a village shop and post office, didn't you?
We had a lovely little village shop and a post office and the butchers. We had 2 butchers. Well, the little shop that we used to go and spend our pennies and halfpennies. People called Saunders had it, the old lady. And she used to come up and watch us children choose our sweets, because they were all laid out in boxes on a shelf, and the boiled sweets were all in jars. And she used to come up and stand there while we chose what we wanted for a penny or a halfpenny. If you were rich, well, you had tuppence, but I never had that. Well, you used to get licorice pipes, which I used to love, and sherbet dips, bars of Nestle's chocolate, which were about a penny. Well, we always had deliveries of from Axminster called Mail, and they delivered every week. They used to deliver bread, and he always brought a big basket in with tea, all sorts of things, cakes and all sorts of useful things, He always used to bring that indoors, and then my mother used to choose what she wanted. My father grew all our vegetables. We never, ever bought vegetables. Never, ever. It was unheard of. We used to go in the post office, which was a post office and a grocery shop. And on the counter, they had all the biscuits, like Huntley and Palmer's and all that, with the lids off. And you could see all the biscuits, Marie and Digestive and whatever. And they used to come around and you'd choose what you wanted, and they'd pick them out and put them in the bag and weigh them. And that was the biscuits. And they sold butter, which they used to cut and pat up, and lard, which they used to cut, all on a big marble slab, I remember. All so different. You think I'm telling fairy tales, but that's how it was.
And I know that in the 30s you also went to Brownies in the village hall. So tell me about the time that you spent with the Brownies.
When I went in the guides, we went camping up on St Mary's, which is only about a couple miles away. Oh, and I was glad to get back in my own bed.
Why was that?
Well, because we had to sleep on a straw palliasse. Palliasse being a mattress that you have to stuff before you go to bed with straw. That was hard. All my hips were aching the next morning. Horrible.
And what about the cow?
And the cows looked in one night and frightened my friend and I. My mother made me a sleeping bag, which was just a blanket sewn up, and that was my sleeping bag.
Tell me about your relationship with your gran.
Oh, she used to take me shopping once a week. We used to go to Lyme Regis shopping, and I told you, did I, that she bought me an Easter egg once. And she left me. She told me to sit under the museum. Mm. She said, "Now you sit there." And she left me with a grocery basket with the Easter egg in. And I thought in my little mind that she'd gone longer than she should have been. So I decided to leave the basket. Although my Easter egg was in there, I didn't worry. I left the basket and I started wandering up the street, crying. Lost my granny. And then an old lady caught hold of my hand and she started having me back. What does your granny look like? And with the same, she was coming up the road with a basket. And she was a bit cross because she thought she'd lost me. And what was she going to say to Mother when she got home? I suppose that was what was going through her mind. At Christmas, she used to give us little presents, which we thought were lovely. She gave me a little doll's pram once, with doll in. I remember waking up Christmas morning and pushing it around on the landing, threw it to bits. Just a little tin doll. There was nothing special. She used to do all our dresses and my brothers. She used to make their trousers. And then she'd buy them a jumper and that was their outfit.
And Ida, I know that you lost a brother, didn't you? Tell me what happened.
Well, he had bronchitis. He was 1 year old. I didn't know him because he was born before I was born after he died, you know. He had bronchitis and he was a lovely baby, my mother said. Broke her heart, really. I think it affected my mum, especially. She ended up being sort of, not mental, but with mental pains in her head. And that's when I had to come home and look after her. No help at all. Well, when I think of it now, it makes me quite cross, because I think a lot of people could do more than they do.
Mm. You did go to one or two dances, and you described that back then, back in the sort of 30s, people were very naive and innocent, weren't they?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We just used to dance and friends, you know, and that, and I think nothing out of the ordinary, but we were just happy meeting up and having a nice evening.
And you had
you hardly knew where babies come from, leave alone.
So you had no sex education?
No. Never used to talk about those sort of things in those days. Just not talked about.
Now, Ida, when war broke out in 1939, you had left school and you had started to work in domestic service. Now,
that's right.
Tell me about those early war years, what you did and what it was like for you.
I went to a house when I was 14. I told you that, I think, didn't I?
Yeah. I
didn't want to go, but it was the only thing that had to happen in those days. I had no choice. So, like I tell you, I didn't know one end of the broom from the other. Well, it was all strange, living in such a big mansion. The atmosphere was pleasant. The old cook was nice. The little footman there, he was nice. The butler was nice. And the family were nice. They were a nice family. But I was only there 3 months, but the weather was terrible because it was right down on the edge of the cliff and used to get the sea mist. And I was there January, February and March, so that wasn't a very good time, was it?
And what work were you doing at 14 in the house?
Just washing floors, washing up pots and pans, doing vegetables.
And I know you had to get up really early, didn't you?
6:30. Used to have to wash the kitchen floor before the lady of the house came out to give the menu for the day. The food was lovely because they had a farm belonging to the estate. We used to get lovely cream every day, lovely food. We did have a servants' hall that you could go in, and there was a great big open log fire there, which was nice, and we used to have our meals in there, you know.
And you worked 6.5 days a week?
Yeah, used to go have a half day a week off. And then if it was dark, my father would come back with me because it was about 2 miles up country lanes. Although I had a push bike, he used to come back with me because I was frightened of the dark.
And you were very you had to learn things. And I remember you telling me about the crumbs on the floor and that really sticking with you.
I know. The cook said it's only dirty folk that leave crumbs on the floor. So every time I put the hoover around here, I think, it's only dirty folk that leave crumbs on the floor. I've never, ever forgot that. Never.
How much did you earn a year as a kitchen maid?
£32 a year.
32.
And we got paid once a month. And I used to give it all to my mother to buy clothes, which was very little. And she gave me a shilling. You think I'm telling fairy stories? £32 a year, not a day.
So you spent 3 months working on that estate. Where did you go after the 3 months was up?
I went across, I don't know how I got there, but I went across to another big house called Warehouse, where there was just a captain. It was called Captain Fullerton. I only had 2 children, a son and a daughter. He was a widow, but we had a housekeeper there and a butler and a housemaid. I was there for 3 years and 3 months, to be precise. Well, it was very frightening with the war, because I think I did mention to you, the planes used to come off the sea and they used to go up the country, but they used to seem to fly right over the house.
Mm.
And you could always tell when it was Germans by the noise of the engine.
Mm.
My teeth used to chatter. I was so frightened, couldn't go home very often.
And what was the work like? What kind of work did you do at the house?
Well, in the end, I had to do everything, because the war came, well, the war was on, and everybody left. They had to go in the war. Big passages that I had to wash the floors and limestone slab floors, which were very old and horrible to wash. I had to wait on him in the dining room with the silver service and all that sort of thing. I had about 100 pieces of silver to clean. I mean pieces, I mean trays and lamps and not little things. I mean, you were the maids. You didn't ever forget you were the maids, and they were the gentry. They were rich people, gentry.
And you never questioned it?
No, because it was just the way of life then. You see, life now with people, it's all evened up more, hasn't it? Whereas then, there was the very poor and there was the very rich, which made an awful lot of difference.
What other memories have you got about the war, Ida?
Well, I know my brothers went in the war. My eldest brother went out with the British Expeditionary Force after Dunkirk, and he was in the searchlight. And the Jerrys were coming on, and they had to push all their searchlights and get rid of all their equipment and make for the coast. And he came back in an old coal boat, landed at Bourton, which is not far from here. And then they started firing on the boats because they thought they were Germans. But anyway, he got home all right. My mother was worried sick.
What did you think and feel when it ended, Ida?
Oh, it was a relief to know all that horrible killing and bombing and it all finished. And the world could get back to what it should be, what it used to be.
And for you, when the war finished, you came home to look after your mum, didn't you? And she was diabetic, and you had to learn to inject your mum, and you were only 17. So what was
right.
What was that like for you?
Very worrying.
Why?
Very worrying. Because I thought I loved my mother, and to have to do that to her, and the mental state she was in. She was in pain all the time, and I couldn't do anything about it.
And how long did you look after her for? How many years?
Until I was 52, I think. And then I looked after my father. He lived 10 years after, and I looked after him till he died.
Tell me about the cottage that you lived in, because I know that your gran bought it.
At Newcastle, you mean? Newcastle Cottage?
Yeah, the one that your gran bought for £100.
Yeah, she bought for £100. Well, I lived there for 71 years.
And what did that cottage mean to you?
Well, it meant stability and happiness in some ways, but with my mother and that being ill, it was a trying time.
What did that cottage mean to you?
Well, it was home. I mean, I had worrying times there as well, but it was just security and a home. Some happiness, some not happiness with the worry of my mother.
And how hard was it for you to sell the cottage?
Well, when I locked the door for the last time, I couldn't believe that I was never going back in there again. And I felt that the cottage knew I'd left it, which is silly, isn't it? Because I suppose I'd been there so long and I knew every nook and cranny of the whole place. We had a well at the bottom of the garden. I had to go down and get the water in the beginning. It was a thatched cottage, real chocolate box, in a lovely position, facing south. It was my home, but this is a lovely bungalow, and I've got everything here I want, but it's not like Newcastle. It's not got all the character. This is no character.
You had a scooter, though, and it was quite outlandish, so tell me about your scooter.
I had lots of scooters. The first one I had was a French model, which I had to pedal to get up this very steep hill to the cottage. I had to get the revs up to get it up the hill. Well, then I progressed to Lambrettas, which was easy. And I also had, the last one I had was a Honda Sports. And I used to just whiz up and down the hill. I never, ever had an accident. I used to say to it, "You're my best friend."
And tell me where you used to go on your scooter then, Ida.
I used to go to work in Huddens and the hospital.
Because that was a break for you, wasn't it? Because you were an auxiliary.
Oh, yes, because I had friends in there.
And you were there for over 20 years. What are your standout memories working there?
Well, there was comradeship with the staff, all of them. It was nice. And helping. I used to like to think I was helping somebody. That was my whole attitude to the job. I helped a lot, I think, but one old lady I helped. She couldn't go to the toilet, so I had to help her. And she said, "You saved my life," she said. And we had to lay patients out and put them out in the morgue, all that sort of thing. I mean, you had to be kind and all that, but you didn't have to go home and sort of worry about it.
Ida, you have been in Uplyme all your life.
Absolutely.
Why is Uplyme so special to you?
Well, I just feel part of me. You feel safe here. It's a lovely area. Well, not many reach that age in one position, do they?
And if you could describe Uplyme to somebody that had never been to the village before, how would you describe the village to someone?
Peaceful, kind, pretty. It's a lovely little area. We're very lucky here.
You mentioned you're in the bungalow now. Tell me how the pandemic since March has affected you. How has it impacted on your life, would you say?
Well, it stopped me from going to the little things I used to do, like we had knit and natter. We used to go to that one afternoon a week. I used to go on the ring and ride twice a week sometimes. Go to Bethany Chapel every Sunday. All things that didn't mean a lot to some people, but it did to me.
Do you feel that you've become more lonely, or do you feel that you've been supported through lockdown?
Oh, I am lonely, yes, but I've got lots of friends that come in, but it's not quite the same as when you've got someone of your own living with you, is it? But I try and overcome it with keeping myself as busy as I can at my age, knitting and cooking. I always cook a meal for myself. Every week I change my bed, put it in the washing machine. Mind, I've got the girls, which I call the girls, is the dishwasher and my washing machine. I call them the girls. Everybody laughs. Everybody laughs at me. I said, "Well, I've got the girls working," and they look at me. I love to hear the dishwasher going and the washing machine almost every other day, I think.
How have you found being interviewed today?
Well, it's a bit saddy. A bit sad in a way, but a little bit nervy too.
Why sad? Is it because you're reflecting on things that have passed?
Yeah. But it happens to us all, doesn't it?
And do you think it's important to remember things and pass them on?
Oh, yes. I think some people now they just say, oh, I wouldn't have done that. I said, you had to do it. There was nothing else. Yeah, some of the girls in the hospital, when I used to tell them, I said, what I had to do. Oh, no, I wouldn't have done that. I said, Carl, you had to do it. There was nothing else. There was no handouts in those days like they get now.
And when you think back on your life, how would you sum your life up, Ida, that your 95 years of being here, being in Uplyme?
Well, it's been happy, really. I've loved it, you know. I have a lot of downs, I know, but on the whole, I'm quite happy, really, with what I've got now.
And you're still baking?
I'm still baking, and thanks to my granny and my mother that worked hard. Otherwise, I don't suppose I would have quite so much as I've got now.
Well, it's been lovely talking to you today, Ida, so thank you so much.
That's all right. Thank you then. Bye.